Welcome to season 3 of Be Nice and Roll Dice. And today's episode is about Warhammer 40k, but it might not be what you would be expecting from me in particular. And just a note, my puppy Lukas the Trickster, he does make an appearance later on in the video, which does lead to a little bit of technical difficulties, but I do end up getting it together for the end, so just be patient with me and enjoy the episode. My name is Tanya, otherwise known as the War Mistress. I've painted some minis, I've played some games, and I'm on a mission to be nice and roll dice. We're back with another episode of Be Nice and Roll Dice, and I'm here with everybody's favorite, Mr. Val Heffelfinger.
Everybody?
Everybody. I think that you're probably one of the more requested guests that I get. Yeah.
Not even possible.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's just me using my actual alternative accounts. So this is my alternative account, but this is my real alternative account.
10 alternative Val accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, it worked because here you are again.
Boom.
Yeah. So.
And is this the first show back?
This is going to be the first show back.
Shooting out of the chute like a rocket.
That's right. See, I figured that I would start at a high point and then just, it's downhill from there.
Get higher.
Yeah.
Okay, downhill.
Yeah,
right.
downhill from there. Yeah.
Well, you live in the mountains, so your base altitude is pretty high.
That's true. Okay, so if people don't know who you are you and what do you do, and why should we care about what you have to say?
Well, I have these dumb glasses that I like to wear when the podcast has a video element. Because you can't see where I'm looking. It's very good. See, if you take them off, you can see I'm looking down. So that's one reason.
Okay.
The other thing is that I have no idea why. Years ago, I got onto Chapter Tactics, and then people keep inviting me on their shows. And then Frontline Gaming trusted me running their shows. So I help coordinate and make sure that all the Frontline Gaming FLGN shows happen every week. But I can't even really take credit for that because every show has a series of talented individuals who do all the work every week.
Yeah, you still do a lot of work, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did some streaming last year, although I'm stepping back a little bit from that.
You did a lot of streaming last year.
Yeah, it was an interesting little experiment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I got pretty close to how the sausage is made, and well, now I'm here.
Excellent. So we're coming back. It's called Be Nice and Roll Dice. Mm-hmm. It's not Be Nice and Play Warhammer 40k, but I do feel like Warhammer 40k.
That was implied.
Yeah, I do feel like Warhammer 40k is like a huge part of my online persona, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I'm not playing Warhammer 40k right now, and you're not really playing Warhammer 40k right now either, are you?
No. No, I'm not actually. No, I haven't played 40k. I mean, the last time I played was probably before. I don't think I've used the New York Codex. So the last time I played was when the custom stomp book is still a custom stomp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But no, I have not. Yeah, I've not played under the new book.
Mm-hmm.
So what? I don't even know. Is that a year? Is that a year? Somewhere around there? I think this time last year I played a couple games.
Yeah. I played, so I was really just sick and tired of trying to make guard work, and they just kept getting worse and worse and worse, as you do. And so I was like, okay, I think it was October I made the decision. I was like, I'm going to switch to Custodes because I've got a small contingent that I've been playing in my guard for a while, so I just have to add a few things. And I got a Custodes army, right? So then I make this Custodes army, and the book is busted, and nobody wants to play against me, even though I'm playing
you might have
infantry heavy solar watch.
I'd say effective about 7 hours ago. I don't want to date your podcast too badly, but I did to the minute. People are going to be willing to play you again. No problem. You're going to be able to get lots of dates.
You know what's funny?
With the Custodes.
You know what's funny, though? Because my list was, like, almost all infantry. People are, like, I'm not even going to have to change my list.
Nice.
It's going to play, like, the exact same. Yeah.
Cheers to you.
Yeah. So I played one game for play on tabletop,
That's fine.
and then it was really fun. It was really fun. Stay tuned to play on tabletop if you want to see how that crazy game went. And then I put them aside, and I said I don't want to play this game anymore.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had like a really good game, and then I came back to my local meta, and then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So what's bumming you out? What was specific? What was the specific moment that caused that reflection?
Um, so I was playing one of my regular sparring partners, and the Age of Sigmar crew was playing on the other side of the store and laughing and having such a great
Oh
time.
man.
And then I was like, I love playing with my buddy Andy, but I really wish I was playing Age of Sigmar right now.
I mean, you are somewhat close to Dayton Obrey, I do believe, where you are.
Am I?
He's yeah, no, he's out in the British of Columbia's.
Is he? He's
I mean, like you're in the
in.
same province. That doesn't mean you're
I think
close to
he's
him,
like
but
4 hours
he's there.
away from me.
Like,
He's like
you
in
may have.
Trail or something.
He's near. He's there. He's out in the Great West.
Yes.
And
Lots of
I will
trees.
say, when I was at the Las Vegas Open,
Mhm.
it was clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if there was a doubt before, that AOS players are having way more fun. Like, not even close. Like, they are in just a different latitude of fun times.
Mhm.
That is blatantly obvious. So, like, there was a lot of good. There was chanting, like soccer hooliganism. There was some, public nudity or accusations of it. I mean, there was just a lot that was
Yeah.
happening over there.
Yeah.
And they just seem to be having a blast, and that's nice. And who knows why that is.
Mhm.
But, you like to see that. You like to see people having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And people probably don't know this, but the first game that I actually fell in love with was Age of Sigmar 1.0. Like
1.0.
1.0.
How 1.0?
Not like the beginning of 1.0 where they were like, I don't know, balance it yourself. Points, you don't need points.
So you had a general handbook.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a heathen. Come on now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. I was kind of hoping you would say like, oh, from the get go, because
Very
like you would
first.
be the one like you're not the one person. It's like 7th edition 40k. Like there are people out there that are like, that's my favorite, man. I love it.
I started in that edition.
But like Sigmar, there are also sometimes people who are like, I love the way it was at the beginning. It's been ruined. So you never know.
Yeah.
Maybe you were one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so ogres were like my first love that I fell in love with on the table. I
Right.
was sort of painting 40k before then, but then I started playing Age of Sigmar, and then that's when I got hooked on wargaming. So it's sort of like coming back to the beginning.
So does that mean that you've started playing Age of Sigmar now?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Jeez.
almost like exclusively play Age of Sigmar now. Yeah. And I'm so happy because it's like the one game that I can like constantly beat my husband at. It's amazing.
And that's that's how you pick your games. That's great.
That's right. Who
nice.
cares? Like, if I play other people and I lose, that's fine. I just can't lose to him.
Okay. So what's that match? I just don't want to derail us, but what's that matchup tend to be? Ogres versus what?
Maggotkin of Nurgle.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a Nurgle
It's a very out of shape matchup.
Like, a lot of dad bods.
I feel like there's a lot of winded troops in that. Oh man, we won priority.
Damn it! It's really hoping to get a break. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, like, ogres are considered like an underpowered faction right now in Age of Sigmar, but I never feel like how I felt playing guard. Like, there's no chance whatsoever. Right. So yeah, but you're not playing 40k either. So what are you playing?
Nothing. I've been contemplating playing things a lot. I think honestly, like a lot of my malaise with 40k stems first and foremost from the pandemic. So like, being in lockdown a lot had like obviously disrupted my ability to play. I was still wanting to. Like I remember when ninth edition came out. It was actually just before my son was born. I raced to like try and line up a game that was socially distanced, double masked that a friend of mine was willing to do, and we played a couple games that way, and that was fun. And when ninth came out, like it was a pretty celebrated rule set. Like it felt like a cleaner, not necessarily leaner, but definitely like a tightened up version of eighth, which was just a spectacular edition. So yeah, it was all very, very positive. But I don't know about where you are, but where I am, like the lockdowns kept happening, kept rolling around, and I also did get very involved a lot more with the media stuff, which that becomes my hobby. Like it became my hobby in a big way. So like getting the streams ready or as close to ready as I could be, and going out and doing those things like that replaced when my tournament attendance has stopped being actually going to play.
Mm-hmm.
And tournaments were 100% the thing that drove my hobby and like drove my interest in everything. So inadvertently, I think by me getting into some stuff that was more, dare I say, hobby adjacent, I have become a lot more disengaged with the game. And then like, I'm not going to call myself casual because I've long denied the existence of a casual Warhammer player. But you know, I do look at ninth, and it just doesn't turn my crank right now.
See, that's interesting that you bring up casual, right? I don't really consider myself casual. I don't really consider myself like competitive either. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle and I can go either way depending on how I'm feeling or who I'm playing against. But it was getting to the point, like, I think at a certain point I had to, like, step back and, like, accept my own sort of shortcomings because I have memory issues. Don't smoke weed, people. Um,
Marijuana affects the memory.
it does. So I have memory issues, and then I also have reading comprehension issues. So I kind of came to the realization that I was spending more time studying, trying to learn the rules than I was
Right.
actually playing the game and learning like tactics and things. And it was just too much for me to keep up with, and it was just really not fun for me. And yeah, I don't know. I don't feel that with Age of Sigmar so much.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where they are in the life cycle of AOS. It definitely has a different feel. I know that they just started up. I guess they're what was it last summer that their third edition came out, or was it the summer before? Last summer.
Last
Yes.
summer, I think, and then they
Yeah.
just sort of released 3.1.
Okay. Oh, because they've gone to the seasons thing as well.
Yeah.
At any rate, like it feels like their pace isn't as alarming. And
Hmm.
actually, with 40k, the issue I don't think is the pace. Actually, I do think it's the pace, but for different reasons.
Hmm.
In eighth edition, within 1 year, you had every book out except for Orcs, Sisters, and GSC. So that was with that was 1 year out of the gate, and at that point, you had a pretty solid meta. Like it was forming around obviously the Castellan stuff and all that, but that summer was pretty awesome. And then when the books came out for Orcs, GSC, and Sisters, they didn't tip the apple cart, and they didn't start with the cycle of campaign books very heavily, at least, until Psychic Awakening and what would have been the last year of 8th edition, which actually would have been a welcome sort of change of pace, I think, at the time. And then I feel like the switch to ninth and sort of after 3 years of 8th edition, which was going well, and we also never really got to finish because Psychic Awakening was launched during the pandemic
Hmm.
and the harshest point of the pandemic as well. Never really. I feel like eighth never really got to be finished, and I feel like a
Hmm.
lot of the stuff that was out, like I can remember, and I might be talking out of turn here because I'm not like super meta man or anything like that, but like I do recall things like the Tau were suddenly interesting with their stuff. Before the pandemic, even Grey Knights were kind of cool. Orcs had been nerfed, but there was still lots of game for them. Like there felt like, and also Space Marines had finally been addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to point to like one moment where it started to become somewhat obvious, or the alarm that like, hey, your parents might be coming home, the party's over, kind of went off, I think, with that second Space Marine book.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so detached from reality. And it immediately, when, first of all, it's the second Marine book in one edition.
Yeah.
So that immediately felt bad. Like that was a feel bad situation because, well, it's the second Marine book in a single edition. Like what is that? What is that if not just craven cash grabbing? And that hurt, but it was kind of cool because they're the supplements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, okay, here's the supplement thing. That kind of made sense to me. I was like, hey, this is great because now we're gonna get some deeper rules. All right, okay, cool. And then those supplements were just a different game.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single one of them was just divorced from the world of Warhammer that we were in. And we were doing, me and Peter the Falcon were doing Stat Center at the time. And every week we were watching in real time of just how crushingly dominant these new books were, and like really ringing those bells and those alarms. Actually, we're able to get a reaction. So if you can imagine, like Drukari was a big deal, like just running roughshod for so long, like almost a year there. They just didn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
At least then, like it felt like a long time, but 6 weeks they at least did some things, right?
Yeah.
However, Iron Hands continued to be dominant. Anyway, that's kind of how 40k, like that's kind of like, that was my last code, like Siegler crushing with the Leviathan list, Proviathan at LVO 2020.
That was the greatest game that I ever saw.
Yeah.
No.
But I mean, it was still cool in the sense that like, to me, like we were running our sort of gonzo coverage, that was also what got me interested in doing streaming stuff. But like, it was still an interesting event because you had like people guessing at what the meta would be. The Proviathan list in that iteration kind of appeared on the scene at that tournament. I mean, I'm sure there's people in Europe who are gonna be like, "You're an idiot." No, it was like I was using it for 6 months, but like it was like, definitely felt like a bit of an innovation. You had Nick Nanavati like audibling the White Scars and like just taking himself out by accident. You had Manny Chima, the great evil one from the UK, coming with just the most oppressive.
Oh, that was the Imperial Fists list.
Imperial Fist list. And I think it was all kind of okay still at that moment because, well, it hadn't been that long, and we had such like they had like just so much goodwill in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
That like, yeah, all that busted stuff was kind of, and we could also see that these players had, skill. Like there was still skill being displayed on the table.
Right.
And I think from that moment on, then you got the pandemic, like I said, and then you sort of went into 9th edition without any real need for it.
Yeah.
And I think that so then after the Space Marine thing, that now we're under a year later. Are we? Yeah, you're under a year later. There's another Space Marine codex.
Yeah.
So that feels bad.
Yeah.
When
you put it that way, it's like, yeah, ew.
It's gross.
Yeah.
It feels gross. And on top of that, it's insulting a little bit that they're just dumping bucket like book after book after book on a group of people who would really like the Zoomers to stop calling us boomers and would much prefer to not have to have books all the time. Like, please, like we don't need these books. Like books are cool, man. Like, stay in school, but like we don't need.
We have these now.
Yeah, you don't need it. Like make a codex.
Save the trees.
But like make a codex something beautiful that lasts longer than 11 months. Like make it like a limited edition Black Library like item that you want to have on your shelf,
Make them like the Horus Heresy books.
Right? Like make it gilded,
so beautiful.
Like just like make it worth $150, and don't make it about like forcing me to buy it because there's rules in it, which feels bad. Make me want to buy it. It wouldn't be hard. Like these
No.
guys, this is the thing that I think again that the thing that is unrequited love, right? It's like these guys, like we really like this shit, and yet they do, and yet they don't realize that. It's like we really love you, and you do these
You break
things,
my heart.
but you do these like really like lame tricks. It's like I'm gonna give you the money. Like don't worry about it. I'm gonna give you the money. Just you don't have to sell me 2 Space Marine books in 11 months or whatever it was. I hope I'm right about. I think I'm right about that. That's 2019, right? Was September 2019 was the new Space Marine book. Is there a whole other year before 9th edition? I can't remember. Anyway, it wasn't long.
I don't think so. I don't
June
remember.
2020 is the
I can't
even
like fathom time right now.
Yeah, June 2020 is 9th edition. So yes, I would have to be under a year to the next Space Marine book. Anyway, so now I'm whining, and I think where this got me to was when I was just fine with 7th edition, and I was really enjoying how the community was keeping it alive, and I loved the spirit of the tournament scene and how just like I don't know the community was so great, and there were all these people who were super upset about it, and I would say, dude, find something else. I broke up with Star Wars. I stopped playing video games. They made me mad. They made me upset. Wasn't enjoyable. And judging by that rant I was just on, I think I would be a hypocrite if I were to continue to fucking mope my way through. Sorry about that. Mope my way along in playing 40k right now.
Yeah.
Like I didn't sell my armors or anything like that.
No.
In fact, ironically, in my head, I kind of have what I'm sure will be the next time they do their double Space Marine release of the codex. So that's probably September-ish, just before Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah.
and then stuff like that, right? Like, come on. Anyway, I've got that sort of earmarked as maybe I'll come out of my hole. But until then, I've been really into Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
And what is it about fantasy battles that is piquing your interest right now?
Have you ever explored an abandoned place?
Yes.
That's why. That's what it is for me.
Just to see the things that people have left behind and deemed like unnecessary.
To see the things that people have left behind. To like, I don't know if you've ever like. I remember when I was a kid. I went to there was this abandoned resort that I found myself at on a Bahamian island, and it was called Jack Tarp Village, something like that. Anyway, it was this abandoned like tropical resort, and it was wild. And it's also like things are just sort of frozen on the last day that someone gave a shit about that place, right? Keep swearing, sorry. But like,
it's okay.
But it's just so fascinating to just keep walking around and like it was kind of like people in the pandemic might have this experience, but like going back to the office, 6 months, 7 months later, a lot of I realized that like people's lunches were just on their desks and like plants were dead all over the place. Like I had to go because I was the guy who's still going in. Like at one point I should go like throw away all these like dead plants and old sandwiches. Like it was just because like it was just frozen in time.
Yeah.
And it's really like to me, I don't know. I find that kind of fascinating. Fantasy's kind of like that. I mean, it's continued on in some facets, but it is a world just as rich and deep as 40k. It's cool as hell. It's supported way better. Like the video game quality is like way higher. So obviously, pandemic, I was returning to video games a bit, and I played a ton of Warhammer 2 Total War. Love it. Warhammer 3 still waiting for it to get together, but they'll get it there eventually. I love Vermintide 2. Absolutely fantastic. Dark Tide's coming out in the summer. And there was a wicked Blood Bowl Blood Bowl 2, which is just a 1-to-1 translation of Blood Bowl to the tabletop to video game, and those were all fantastic, and they were all really great at world building and getting me into the various things of Warhammer Fantasy, and it's also just nice, like, because I was so sick of just the like really accelerated pace of, but also not fast enough of Ninth Edition, that it was cool that like the game is the way it is.
You could
8th
actually
edition,
get caught up at some point.
yeah, like it's just kind of neat. Like I used to always kind of scoff at people who'd be like, "Well, I only play 3rd edition." Like, yeah, okay, cool, buddy. But there is something to be said about a game that just is. Like there's no, like, yeah, sure, something's OP in it. Yep, it's like that's the way the game is, or change it, do something about it.
Yeah.
And there are some really awesome community developed rule sets and versions that do try to address some of the issues that people had with 8th edition.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I really like Age of Sigmar because I feel like player skill means something. Because
Mm.
like even in like like the I'm gonna say really big tournaments, because Age of Sigmar tournaments don't tend to be as big as 40k tournaments. But even in like some pretty big tournaments, you'll find like low tier armies are still winning events. Which I don't think you really see that. Like, when was the last time you saw a guard army, which is the equivalent of like Hedonites of Slaanesh at this moment of time? When was the last time you saw a guard player win anything?
Probably the first 6
Years?
months of 8th edition.
Yeah.
Private guard primary anyway. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's just where the particular meta or community is at as far as in their development, of things, and how hardcore various folks are. One other thing about 40k that's kind of fascinating and a real challenge to deal with, I think, for GW, and this is not something I think that's easy at all, is that people have gotten very good at it, right?
Mhm.
So, like, I think people talk about game balance all the time, and I think very clearly the strategy for balancing a game with 25 factions or so, 1,000 data slates, is by just changing those data slates as you go. They don't roll it all out in one go. They change it as they go. So like there's never balance, but what you do is you disrupt the sort of ecosystem, if you will, enough that the game isn't solved, so you can't figure out what's OP necessarily very quickly. And if you're just 4 people playing, in the basement or like at a local gaming club, that might still be the case. Then you might get on to like some sort of super efficient combo or whatever, but might not think what the hyper busted stuff is.
Mhm.
Whereas now, that's not possible. So like before anything has been released, every single book has been more or less solved, as far as I would say from a raw power angle anyway.
Mhm.
The most efficient stuff is pretty easily teased out, if not has been 100% found. The best builds are, 80, 85, 90% locked in. And I'm just sandbagging that number because I don't actually know, but I would assume it's probably more like 100%.
Mhm.
And, the players who are on that bleeding edge, and have a 3D printer or friends with a lot of armies, they're able to like ride that wave. But the game then just feels bad,
Mhm.
right? And like they've been doing that with 9th edition, where every single book has just been like that Space Marine book, just like a different level
Yeah.
from the ones before it, right? And that's just, I don't
The
know if that's a fun way to do it.
the thing that I hear is, well, if you don't play competitively, then it doesn't affect you. And to that I say, but it does. It does. Like, if you're a brand new player and you pick up guard and your other friend is a brand new player and they pick up Tau, you're gonna see right away that
Mm-hmm.
something isn't right here, right? You're two shooting armies, but you're just completely outclassed in every single way. And I from my personal experience, because I don't consider myself competitive or narrative, somewhere in the middle. It's really disappointing to like have a little bit of experience and like see your opponent who's brand new to the game playing an army making tons of mistakes, and you know they're still going to win against you because your faction is so bad that as soon as you make one little mistake, you can't come back from it. Um, that's that's really disappointing for me. And I think that it actually makes pickup games at the game store really, really difficult,
100%.
right? Because some people are really bad at communicating what they want out of a game. Like some competitive players will have a really hard time telling a person at a pickup game, look, I'm looking to play super sweaty and I want to see how fast I can table you. They're not going to say that because people aren't going to play them. But I think at the same time, people are who are maybe a little bit more casual, they don't want to say, look, I am a casual player. I'm just looking to like get 5 rounds and roll some dice and have fun, because their opponent might say, I'm not into playing that way either. But at the
Mhm.
same time, if those two people play, not they're not going to have a good time, I don't think,
Yeah.
necessarily.
And we were in a place there for a while where you didn't need the like pregame prenup, right? Like you didn't have to like say, what you were going for, and it was all good to just sort of try your best and play whatever you had.
Mhm.
Whereas I think maybe that balance is tipped. I think what you're describing though is what happens when you somehow have a book that is. I mean, even though we've been on a release cycle like we have, the guard book was the fourth book released in 8th edition, so I would put it somewhere in 2017.
Mhm.
So, like that's 5 years old. In modern Games Workshop terms, that is ancient history,
Yeah.
right? So like that's I think one of the weird things about 9th edition is that it feels like it's a lot of stuff coming out,
But
but
yet
it
not
actually hasn't been.
enough. Yeah.
So the thing that they've seemed to have really boned up with this one, in my opinion, just putting my critique hat on, this is that in 8th edition they worked so hard to get the books out the door for everybody, because the arguments we've been having in this cycle are the exact same as they were in 8th edition about indexes. So the index factions were screwed. They were not on an even playing field. They sucked when compared to the ones that got books.
Mhm.
So if you're playing checkers and the game has changed to chess, it's gonna suck. Like there's just no way around it. But to their credit, and this is why they had so much credit, is they hustled as hard as they could. And no other period of time in Warhammer has almost every single book been up to date within a year of launch.
Mhm.
Of the new thing. That was awesome. And as an orc player who had still had to wait, I was okay with it because even the index orcs were still the probably at this today is probably the second best set of orc rules that has ever existed. So like they were just still better than what 7th edition was. So like, but anyway, having those out at that fast meant that everyone was more or less on the same foot very quickly. In
Mhm.
9th edition, so and by the way, to do that, that meant that they were releasing essentially 2 books a month, and I think there were 2 months in the first year where they released 3 books.
Mhm.
Now they have not been hitting a pace anywhere near that. And at the same time, they've been releasing these campaign books that are also not strategically done in any way, shape, or form. So, like, I could see a campaign book being kind of cool if it was, you know, glowing up like what Psychic Awakening was
Yeah.
advertised and supposed to be, which is, we're going to glow up factions that are a little bit old, a little tired,
Mhm.
and give them a little bit of a boost, get them caught up a bit. But that's not what these have been at all. They've just been extra rules, and I think they do fall under that bloat category. And they've also you know uh, made strong factions stronger at times. In fact, pretty much every time. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's stuff that just doesn't feel like it's necessary or needed when the core of the game still hasn't been addressed. So they just seem to have forgotten everything that they did right, and that sucks. And then you get to the unrequited love thing again, and then you realize that, hey, we just need to see other people for a little while here.
That's right. My other people is treating me so good right now.
Hey, at least at least you're like going to the twin. Like you're staying more or less on the property.
I'm not playing a dead system.
You didn't have to like go hang out in the cemetery because you just can only hang out with dead people. Yeah, that's good.
Oh dear.
I don't know. That was a long rant, but like to me,
was.
that's just sort of like I think that because a lot of times you don't understand. Like it's hard to see the forest from the trees, but I think that's what's going on. Is like they kind of put it backwards in 9th edition, and also 9th edition didn't really need to happen.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I like. I mean, maybe I'm biased because 8th edition was the edition that I played a lot of. I played in 7th, and it was 7th, but I played a lot of 8th, and I don't know. Even the end of 8th, like it just felt like you just take care of Iron Hands. Maybe you put a little bit of like terrain rules in there, and it'd be all right. You
yeah,
know, like...
which kind of is how things felt at the beginning of 9th edition. You know, yeah.
So okay, so I haven't given up completely on Warhammer 40k because I absolutely love the universe. The IP is amazing. I do have plans to like add models to my army. I'm probably not going to be models that I play until, I mean, at the earliest I get a new guard codex. But do you think that there's anything that could be done that could like draw you back to Warhammer 40k sooner?
Oh, I think so. Like you never know what's gonna like fire up the old imagination, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they can also they have a tendency to just like drop what they were doing and do something else. So it's very possible that they could just correct a couple things and things to be a bit better. But I think honestly though, like I think fundamentally, as far as what drives me to really like be super into Warhammer and try and play as many games as I could was going to tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm being honest, me going to tournaments to compete, I don't know if that'll ever really be a thing again for me. Like maybe team tournaments and stuff like that. So I don't know how into like playing on the bleeding edge of 40k I'll ever be again. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Never say never. I mean, it is a lot of fun. I think I'm more or less in the situation where all my friends believe the Earth is flat. I kind of have a suspicion that it might be round. But if I ever say that out loud, I don't get to hang out with my friends anymore. So I kind of have to like pretend that the world's still flat.
Okay. I like that analogy. That's good.
You know, you're just sort of trapped by your beliefs and values at some point. But anyway, it's still this good people. I get to hang out with you. We have a reason to do that, and just do whatever's fun. Producing media is still fun. Painting stuff, hobby. This is one of the reasons why like GW's got such a great thing for the people who get into it. Is that you get bored with one thing, they got other things that you can get into.
Yeah, I'm
They
also
don't
playing
work like.
Necromunda.
I mean, there's some cool stuff going on there for sure.
It's so fun.
So like there's always something fun to do, and the community is so large and diverse and interesting that there's always something that you can get mixed up in. And I think that's ultimately what I really, really love about it is that I can always, if I'm just looking for something to daydream about, there's always something I can think about when it comes to Warhammer. It may not be what's the best list for the tournament I'm playing in next though, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to end off the episode with something that might just be a little bit of fun. But like, if there were mechanics from other game systems that could be ported into Warhammer 40k to make it more fun, what kind of things would you like to see?
You know what I mean? Okay, I'm gonna fix Warhammer right now. Okay, ready? You
Alternating
ready?
activations.
So yeah, alternate activations immediately, guys. If you want to see how much better it is, go out. You could probably find like houses built out of the Apocalypse game that they released 2 years ago or so. Send it like there's probably a lot of copies of it. Go out, try that rule set. I think it would
APOC
work.
is my favorite rule set ever.
By the way, apparently it's like old school epic, so it's
That's what
not
I've
even.
heard.
So apparently it's just big epic, which is
Mm-hmm.
hilarious.
Yep.
But that rule set I think is really really fantastic. I think a big problem that they have with power creep and all that is that they're basically playing in a rule set that even when they switched it, from 7th to 8th, they kept it kind of trapped in a world that's based around an 8-foot tall superhuman soldier. Which, although he's an 8-foot tall superhuman soldier, there's still things way bigger than that in this universe, right? And so the scale is off because there's just not enough ability to differentiate between. So another thing I think that will make it a lot more fun is you take everything and you multiply it by 10. Take all the points, multiply it by 10. Put the stats on a 0 to 100 scale. Mm-hmm. Put the points, multiply it by 10. Give yourself breadth because the new the new wounding mechanic actually really lends itself to scalability. So if you think of like if you had a toughness, let me think here. Like say you had a toughness 50 Titan. So let's say like the biggest thing was toughness 50. That means like an anti-Titan weapon would have to be strength 100. Mm-hmm. But like even a las cannon is not going to hurt your Titan.
Right.
Still wounded on 6. Like it's like that means that you don't have like if you just messed around with that scale, and there would be a lot of variation in between, you can get to a place where essentially anything when you have such a narrow range where it's very easy to get a weapon that's wounding on a 5, for example. Mm-hmm. You're just looking for rate of fire. Like everywhere, it's always just rate of fire, and you can see that they've been layering. Like it's just this hilarious. Like Looney Tunes things almost, when they build the bridge, like one thing at a time, and then they just wind up in the middle of the air. Okay, everyone gets a -1. Okay, well, you're +1 a wound. Okay, cool. You're negative to hit. Okay.
Sounds like the newest balanced data slate.
Exactly, and it's a mess. And the reason I really fundamentally think that is that they just need to scale it up.
Yeah,
and they thought about it. They thought about it when they did 8th edition, and they didn't go all the way.
It's funny to me that it's funny that you bring up APOC because in my notes where I'm like, oh, what could we do to make 40k more fun? It's just basically make it Apocalypse.
Yeah, it's great
because it's like do damage at the end of the round, alternating activations, use like D10s and D12s, and D10s are particularly interesting because then you can do percentages.
But you don't even like because of the way they did wounding. To me, I don't even think you necessarily need to go to the D10 necessarily. No? I think you can just do it by like just how you set strength and toughness with different weapons and like different rates of fire and all that kind of stuff. I feel like if you just took advantage of the fact that you have to double the toughness to wound on a 2, and like if it's more than double your strength, you wound on a 6. I think if you took advantage of how you can scale that, you open up a lot more like range for possibilities.
Especially when you have 1,000 data sheets.
When you have 1,000 data sheets. Yeah. And then, like you can start, scaling the points correctly as well. So if you have, because right now the issue is that when you have like a very cheap model that doesn't do a lot, take a Grot, for instance. So Grot went from 3 to 4 points. Okay, that's a large percentage increase on its point value. And if you were to cut it and you say, oh, that's too expensive. Now you cut it 1 point. Now you just reduce its cost by 25%. If a Grot was 30 points, and you need to tweak its relative value, you can take a couple points off of it, and you're not dropping it by 25% or 30% in value. And that's what keeps happening. And they don't seem to get this. That like when everything is based on like a scale of 10, when you're at the lower end, and the thing that you're basing everything on is not the weakling in the thing. It's actually you're basing it on really a super soldier in the universe. The cheap stuff you can't value properly, and you can't value properly at the top end. Fantasy, by the way, they've already knew this. Warhammer Fantasy is very, very clearly designed around toughness 3 stat line. So they're like toughness 3 is a big deal. Toughness 3 is like the stat line that clearly the game is sort of built around, like an elf, a human. And so like if you're toughness 4, you are legitimately tougher, and there's actually like not a lot of things that are going to wound you super, super easy. But a lot of stuff's going to hurt you if you're toughness 3, but there's more of you if you're toughness 3, or you got fancier equipment if you're toughness 3. So, like, it's clear that the game is sort of centered around that, and, like, the things that actually get very far away from that, especially to the higher end, are very few and far between, and often kind of divisive. Like a steam tank is, like, toughness 8 or whatever, and that was a big deal. Whereas, like, in 40k, 1,000 data slates, it's really not, it's not a big deal. To relate, because, like, there's always going to be something that's, you know, going to be more than you know, the doubled more than double half your toughness. I can't say it correctly, but you know what I'm saying. Hitting wounding on 5s.
Yeah.
That you can just roll a bucket of dice for.
Yeah.
And kill that thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I have heard amazing things about, like, a number of games, about how balanced they are, and, like, they all have just different mechanics. Either they use different dice, like Infinity uses different dice, right? Or they use alternating activations, like Marvel Crisis Protocol, I believe, is one that uses alternating activations, and Star Wars Legion, I think, is alternating as well. Do you think that bringing in the damage at the end of the round, the battle round, would help some underperforming factions?
I mean, like, what, the way it is in Apocalypse?
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting that everyone
Right.
gets to take a shot. I find that, combined with it being alternating detachments, which I find is a cool compromise that Apocalypse uses. So instead of it being every unit alternating, like you might get in Kill Team, like in the movement phase, I can't remember. But anyway, you alternate, like, detachments of units. So it's not like everything is alternating, but you do get that element. And because damage is at the end, everything gets to actually do something in a turn. So it's interesting. In the couple games I played, I thought it was kind of cool, but it very much changes the paradigm. I think the concept of game balance is, in order to actually achieve it, you have to narrow the parameters. Like, there's just no way around it. You cannot balance a game like Warhammer 40,000 entirely effectively with no constraints, with everything allowed. Everything's cool. I think if you want a game that, like, plays better and, like, 2 people show up and go, you need to really restrict the units, the amount of units you can bring. Like, yeah, that's the way you would do it. You would try, but the thing that happens then is it just gets a little bit more same and boring, because that's what balance means. So people complain.
Here's a good thing. I don't expect complete balance, right? Because the game is just too big, the universe is too big, people want to play with their toys, it's just never going to be balanced. I just would like, when I'm playing my faction, to feel like I have a chance. That's all that I would like.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And I was actually talking to somebody else who does, they play a completely different, they're playing Sisters right now. And they were feeling the same as me, like that they just didn't have a chance at all at the game. Like, you just set your stuff up and then you immediately remove it without it doing anything. And I think not so much balance, but just, like, sort of alleviating that a little bit would make me come back to 40k.
So I think there's also, when you have 1,000 data slates, when you have so many different factions, I think there also might be a need to differentiate what those factions are really all about. So right now, every faction is pitched as if it could be, you know, on an even footing. But, like, the squats that are coming out, realistically speaking, are just a bunch of dudes on a couple mining planets. The Might of the Imperium didn't want them to exist. They're not going to exist.
Right.
You know, so, like, they will just get squashed. Like, you know, like, that's the way it is. What doesn't feel right is when there's when you break the suspension of disbelief, because you're like, wall of guard and those amazing tanks and the supposedly overwhelming firepower just evaporates because the mechanics don't match what the thing is supposed to be in your head. And that's what sucks. And I think, though, there's a lot of room for asymmetry in 40k, especially when you're not playing that match play world. But I do think like further differentiating. Right, they do so much right. Like I hate complaining about Games Workshop because they do so much right. Like the idea of a tournament game and they seem to want to also have a match play game and the Crusade or actual like guided narrative game. I think is fantastic. That gives you some real good places to play around in. But that tournament game, I think it needs to be very different from what a match play game is. I think a match play game is just a bad idea. And I think the narrative game, I think you should keep investing in that because then you can get asymmetrical things going on.
Mm-hmm.
You can have it so that you show up with like if you showed up right now with 4,000 points of guard and played Custodes from 2 days ago.
Yeah.
That sounds like it might be fun.
That might be fun. Yeah.
Right? Like there
Yeah.
might be enough there because that's actually how the guard would win something. But they
Yes.
don't win. They don't win by showing up in a fair fight. They lose in that situation, right?
Yes.
But that becomes more of a like scenario driven narrative based game that just fires up the imagination. Some guys like Play On would love that stuff, and they do it all the time. And it's really fundamentally, I think, what makes Warhammer super cool is imagining those types of things. But people don't just do that. They want to do that because it says so in this stupid book.
It's interesting because I've also sort of toyed with the idea of having like a different way of playing the game for tournaments, right? Because something that I really miss from like 7th and 8th edition is the book missions, like the main rule book missions, because they were a little bit more narrative.
Like Eternal War and stuff, like where it was just like an end of game end of game objective. Yeah,
yeah.
hey man, they've been playing the same missions in fantasy since 2009, and they don't even have objectives hadn't even been innovated yet in Warhammer Fantasy. It's all end of game stuff. It's all kill points. But yeah, sure. I mean, more simplistic stuff is cool. I do love those the concept of the cards that they brought out to sort of shake things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's bringing in elements of asymmetry in that. I think what it is if a game's not going to be fair, like if it's not a fair fight, I think
Lean
people
into
need
it.
to know that. But they need to know that.
Yes.
Like, right? So I think I think the concept that like, oh yeah, you show up with 2,000 points of guard, I show up with 2,000 points of Custodes from 2 days ago. Everything's gonna be cool. That's not a fair thing. Hey, buddy.
I know this guy is teething,
Hey,
and he's a terror.
No.
Yeah, he's 5 months old.
But anyway, I think there's still so many fun ways to play Warhammer 40k for sure.
I do love Crusade.
I'm Crusade curious for sure.
I wish more people around me wanted to play it, but it is quite heavy in like the bookkeeping, so I understand. But it's just so
it's too
cool
bad that
to like
there wouldn't be like a more immersive and interesting way to like do that, like track results over
Wouldn't it
time.
be amazing if they made an app?
No.
That just
What's an what?
Well, what's it? Well, yeah, we're boomers. What's an app?
Oh, that's right.
We have books.
No.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Like, how about an Excel spreadsheet, guys? Like, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure, like, just give me an Excel spreadsheet. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need a fancy app. It's just go to work.
Just something that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think a lot of, if I could round it out, me personally, I understand very much where you're coming from, and I think based on the angst that I see a lot on the internet, I think a lot of people feel like you too. I wouldn't blame entirely Games Workshop for why I'm not super into 40k. There are parts of it. If I was still a tournament going like degenerate, I think I'd probably still be keeping up, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the disillusion. The disillusion of my gaming group over COVID, I think, also has a lot to do with why I'm looking for something else. But yeah, I still played a lot through COVID, and I think I'm just tired of constant studying. I'm tired of like constantly trying to make my crappy army work, and
I mean that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if something's not fun, do something else.
Which is what I'm
I think
doing.
that's ultimately, yeah, no, it's just fully defensible, and I don't think. And frankly, that's the real way. That's the real way you get an organization like Games Workshop, aka a limited liability corporation, to change. Is by
Yes.
saying, actually, this isn't good enough,
Yeah.
and not buying it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why they changed the last time. And that's why they will change again in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks that that's the way it's got to go, but that is the way it's got to go. So if you actually are upset about it, even if you play a different game of theirs, that's still going to scare the shit out of them.
Because you're not spending the money on 40k anymore.
Because it's going to be very terrifying.
Yeah.
If you really want to confuse them, start playing Warhammer Fantasy with me.
So confusing. Yeah. Well, thanks for helping me explore this topic. It is a little bit. I wanted to do this episode a little bit as like a primer to people who follow my content that maybe things are gonna get a little bit weird around here. It might become more like Age of Sigmar, or board games, or Necromunda, or role-playing games. So it might get a little weird around here, but I will still be rolling dice and making content.
I think the second part, being nice, being just such a nice person.
Sometimes.
Even though a lot of your stories are very sassy. And
I thought I was
nice.
known for being sassy.
A lot of sass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I hope this was a positive version of screw this. I feel like it is. I'm not like fully like screw these guys, but yeah, I think it is time to take a break from me.
Yeah.
And yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's why you're not the 40k stress.
That's right.
War mistress.
That's right.
You can pivot to other things involving war.
Pivot. Yes. So the content that's coming up is definitely going to have a lot of war flavor, but it might be a little bit different.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. So would you come on again to maybe do a little specific Warhammer Fantasy Battles episode?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. This is gonna make everyone's gonna just laugh at me, but tomorrow is my first scheduled actual IRL game of Warhammer Fantasy. So we'll see how it goes. I might immediately be like, this was dumb. I see why they stopped it. I see why this game doesn't exist anymore. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
That's totally possible, but I don't think so. I think it should be a good time. And yeah. So I will be happy to give you a report of how that goes.
All right. I look forward to it. Maybe I will also try my best to get a game in of Fantasy Battles and see if I like it.
Hey, the ogres are easily transferred over to over the Fantasy Battles.
Have to play with round bases.
That's literally going the other way. Maybe matters, but going to Fantasy really doesn't matter. Especially ogres. They're 40mm bases, right?
Yes.
Are they
yes,
the 40mm rounds?
Yeah.
Literally, a lot of times that doesn't translate perfectly, but it does for ogres.
All right. Sweet. That's what I'll do. I'll get a game in, and then we'll talk about it.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for being my guest.
I'm sure there's like some guy out behind a restaurant in your town who's just going through the trash who's like, what? Oh, goody, there's a game coming. I'm going to get my fantasy army. Yes. They've been waiting for this moment.
Well, hopefully he doesn't smell like garbage.
No, not in this community.
Lady, come on now.
Come on now.
Well, thanks so much for coming on and talking to me, and yeah, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, and be nice roll dice, people.
That's right. Bye.
Bye.
What do you think? Have you taken a break from a game before? Tell me about it in the comments below. If you appreciate the work that I do, give this video a like, or give me a follow, or you can head on over to my Patreon and you can join my Discord community. Your generous support allows me to keep making these videos. Do you want even more content? You can follow me on Instagram, I do daily updates, or you can listen to my podcast, Forge the Narrative. You can find all of the links in the description below.